Alright people, we're back. Welcome. This is the Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve for the Nintendo Switch. This is gonna be part 11. Potentially the finale. We'll see how things go. I can't promise that it will be because that'll depend how fast I can get through all of this. So we're cross-examining Seiichiro Jigoku at the moment. Probably gonna have to press on everything. A year ago when Kazuma was still in Japan then. Correct, it was at the examination center for applicants for the study tour that I approached him. I'll never forget it. I remember exactly what you said. You just came out and asked me forthright if I'd consider traveling to Britain on an assassination mission. Surely not. I thought it was a joke at first, of course, but then it was made clear to me that if I didn't accept, I wouldn't be considered for the study tour. So you agreed to it just for that? I mean, I know how much you wanted to study in England, but assassination? The Empire of Japan had accepted a proposal for from the British Empire at the time. An agreement to send a student from each country to the others to deepen cultural understanding and friendship. But behind the scenes, the chosen students were to be given assassination missions. I had no choice but to accept the proposal that originated from my British counterpart. Why? Why didn't you expose the plot there and then? Britain acknowledges no part in these alleged misbegotten dealings. I advise you not to make spurious allegations, Foreign Minister Jigoku. As a witness, I am bound to tell the truth, my lord. Anyway, I picked Asogi and explained the details of the plan to him. The target was Inspector T. Gregson. That was a condition of the British study tour. Why Kazuma? Why did you pick him as the assassin? He was the most capable of all the applicants, and in addition, I knew his desire to travel to Britain was very strong. In fact, it was almost more than a desire, it was his whole purpose in life. Yes, as his best friend, I can certainly attest to that. The way he threw himself into his studies, the way he pursued becoming qualified as a lawyer, it was all ultimately for that one single goal of being accepted on a study tour to Britain. And of course, we know the reason behind that. He was determined to find out for himself the truth about his father, Genshin Asogi. There's nothing I wouldn't have done to get here. Be that agreeing to assume the role of an assassin or betraying people's trust. Then again, I guess you can't really consider him as much of a villain, because he didn't actually kill anyone, or so he says anyway. Assuming he's telling the truth, assuming he's not the real culprit in the assassination of Gregson. But I mean, you would expect him to use a sword, not a gun. If it was him. Well, he certainly did a fine job of betraying mine, Asogi. But why was Inspector Gregson the target? I have no idea. Those were the orders from Britain. I was in no position to question them. You have no idea, really. I find that hard to believe. Oh, do you? Judge Jigoku was once a visiting student here in Britain himself, of course. Perhaps he has some connection with Inspector Gregson from that time. The defense really ought to catch up. With what? With the fact that the assassin exchange has absolutely nothing to do with the case under scrutiny here. Yes, I've already admitted to recruiting Asogi. However, in the end, something happened that meant the young man was unable to carry out his mission. Oh yeah? I presume you're referring to the incident that occurred during Kazuma's passage to Britain in January. The awful tragedy that took place on the steamship. Word arrived at the ministry some 2 weeks after the ship's departure from our shores. The visiting student had been killed, but his body had somehow gone missing in Hong Kong. The news was wired to me from a detective I'd placed on the ship to accompany the assassin. Obviously, Kazuma didn't actually die at all, but he did lose his memory, including all details about his special mission. Until he recovered his memories, anyway. Did you not consider dispatching another assassin at that point? That wasn't possible, simply because that black-clad young student over there had already put himself forward as Asogi's replacement. And there was no way to stop him from reaching Britain. Ah, My hands were completely tied. So Mr. Sholmes' strategy worked perfectly. He predicted everything that would happen. Months later, my memory returned, but I'd never intended to go through the assassination mission anyway. So you were playing me right from the outset, were you? I think they're telling the truth, possibly. I mean, it would be pretty lame if Kazuma was painted to be this incredible character right from the start, only to be turned into a villain towards the end. I think that would be a pretty lame way to tell the story, but, I mean, surprising for sure if that was really the case, but believable? I wonder. So you were playing me right from the outset, were you? Is that it? I'd sooner be guilty of that crime than of taking someone else's life. I was prepared to do whatever I had to in order to get myself here to Britain. This line of questioning has gone on long enough. All the court should be concerned about is in the testimony given by the witness are details relating to his relationship with Inspector Gregson and the victim's murder. In that case, as I've already made perfectly clear, I had no connection to the man or his death. And you have some means of substantiating this plea? On the evening in question, a member of the crew was on duty outside my cabin at all times. Outside your cabin in the first-class area of the SS Grouse, you mean? Yes, that's right. Not least because there was a murder of a student passenger earlier in the year, I imagine. The liner operators have taken to posting a crewman outside every first-class cabin door. I can confirm the presence of the crewman guard myself. What do you mean? Because I accompanied Inspector Gregson to Dunkirk that night, I witnessed it with my own eyes. There was a well-built crewman standing guard directly in front of the door to the witness's cabin. At that particular time, of course, I'd gone to the ship's dining room for dinner. The inspector and I asked the crewman to allow us into the cabin while we waited for Judge Jigoku's return. I suppose Inspector Gregson was there in his capacity as the Reaper. He was intending to take the witness's life. Exactly, as I've said numerous times now, I had no intention of killing anyone. So the crewman let two potential assassins into the cabin he was supposed to be guarding. I'm having a hard time at the moment making sense of the events. Not the most convincing of centuries, really. In truth, those were my thoughts too. But anyway, I stayed to talk with Inspector Gregson for a short while, and then I left him there and made my way off the ship alone. Was the guard still at the door when you went? Yes, he glared at me as I walked past. You see, that proves it. If there'd been a shot fired, the crewman would have heard it, so clearly I can't be involved. Well, I haven't kept a single piece of evidence from the scene there. I guess they would be with Sholmes and Mikotoba. But they're back, no? They're supposed to be back already. From Dunkirk. Ah, well. The crewman who was standing directly outside your cabin door, you mean? That's right, a muscular man with a permanent grim expression on his face. He didn't once move from that spot. To be honest, I thought he was a miserable fellow. But as it happens, he's a vital witness now. There's no doubt that Gregson was killed by a gunshot, and it's inconceivable that a crewman standing just outside the cabin door wouldn't have heard that. But wait, what about the ship's enormous steam engines? The noise of them could have drowned out the sound of the gun being fired. Sadly, young judicial assistant, that won't wash. You will recall that my cabin was in the first-class area of the ship, which is also, of course, the quietest. Don't imagine for a moment that it's anything like the steerage where the judicial assistants go. I didn't mean... But a hole like that made by a bullet was found in your cabin, Judge Jigoku. That's compelling evidence that a gun was fired in there. What's that? A bullet hole? Oh yes, you're talking about what the detective uncovered in the wall yesterday, I presume. That was obviously a rotten panel eaten out by woodworm. No doubt he didn't find an actual bullet. That's the hole in this argument. Sadly, I was unable to arrange for the crewman to be brought back to Britain with me. But obviously, if a gun had been fired in my cabin on the night in question, as the defense implies, I would have been arrested on the spot and would never have made it to Britain in the first place. Very true, the witness's logic is sound. Since no gunshot was heard from the witness's cabin on the night in question, we must assume that the witness is telling the truth. I'm glad you've seen sense, my lord. This is annoying. I know Kazuma's already admitted to taking on this incredible assassination plot, but even so, hearing it confirmed by somebody else is still a real shock. It's unforgivable, using Kazuma-sama's feelings to manipulate him into agreeing to such a despicable plan. But I think Kazuma manipulated Judge Jigoku too. He completely double-crossed him. Oh dear, it's hard not to see that as a stroke of brilliance on Kazuma-sama's part. Yeah, essentially, no matter what Kazuma-sama does, he's always the good one in your eyes. One way or another, though. Gregson ended up dead. I really think that the murder must have happened aboard that steamship. So you mean, Judge Jigoku must be lying? I couldn't get him to change his testimony in any way, so I think I have to present evidence somewhere. I'm just not quite sure where yet. I know I shouldn't let my emotions cloud my judgments, but you must destroy him, Mr. Naruhodo. Well, now that I've already pressed on everything... I don't know. I'm stumped. Yeah, he's lying. Of course he's lying. Let me have a look at the evidence, maybe, one more time. Following departure from the port of Dunkirk, all crew members are required to assemble on the main deck at 10 p.m. And that was on the 31st of October. The drill will take 20 minutes. Crew to resume duties as soon as the drill is over. So there was a time during which there was nobody guarding the door, right? Yeah, not at all times. Okay, that's the lie then. Probably. If it's not that, then I don't see what it is. Okay, yeah, we're on the right track. Yes, as the court has heard, there was a crewman posted outside Judge Jigoku's cabin. However, we can be sure that, contrary to the witness's claim, the guard wasn't there at all times. What? I have here a notice of a particular event that was scheduled to take place aboard the steamship on the 31st. What? Where did you get that? It's evidence gathered by Mr. Herlock Sholmes. You were acquainted yesterday, if you remember. Herlock Sholmes again. According to this itinerary, after leaving the port of Dunkirk at exactly 10 p.m. for a period of 20 minutes, all crewmen of the SS Grouse were to gather on deck for an evacuation drill. All crewmen were away from their posts, and during that 20-minute interval, of course, any gunshots emanating from your cabin would have been heard by no one. Since, as you said, it's the quietest part of the ship, it's kind of separated from the rest of the ship, so it has to be not quite as noisy. In summary, Judge Jigoku, you had ample opportunity to commit the crime. Arr! A 20-minute window of opportunity. That's an excellent find, Linosuke. But it amounts to nothing. Why? Why indeed? Because the witness clearly stated in his testimony that no incident occurred in his cabin unless you have some decisive evidence that can show his testimony to be false. Your accusation is nothing more than conjecture. Very true. Well, counsel? Okay, let me reread exactly what he said. Inspector Gregson was killed in Judge Jigoku's cabin that night. I'm certain of it. Okay, hold on. Okay, evidence that an incident occurred in his cabin. Well, we did find the small component. Because the defense has the evidence to prove it. You will present the evidence for the defense at once, counsel. What proof do you have that the victim's life was taken in Jigoku's cabin on the 31st of October? I'm not entirely sure, so, No. Yeah, no, this is correct. Okay. Judge Jigoku, this was found in your cabin yesterday. What is that? The crown of a pocket watch? A pocket watch? And if you will observe, the victim's pocket watch, which we know he treasured, is missing precisely that part. It can't be. Moreover, this crown is a perfect fit on the spindle protruding from the victim's watch. Now, the fact that this was retrieved from Judge Jigoku's cabin tells us that the victim's watch almost certainly broke there. Grrr. In other words, the victim was killed on the 31st during the 20-minute evacuation drill. In the cabin occupied by you, Judge Jigoku. Well, you're razor sharp, aren't you, you young murderer? You acquitted me, Judge Jigoku expertly maneuvered, Ryunosuke. And your argument sounds entirely plausible at first. But rather like this pocket watch, it's full of cracks. What? And I believe Judge Jigoku feels the same way. I was wrong to acquit you earlier in the year. Sorry? If I'd known that it would result in anyone having to listen to this drivel, I would have declared you guilty just to spare the world your ridiculous bombast. I think it's clear that the witness will have to give further testimony. When you hear what actually happened in my cabin that night, you'll notice the pitfall into which you've stumbled. Prior to your renewed testimony, I would like to clarify one point. The fact that this part of the victim's watch was discovered in your cabin means that you acknowledge he was there, I presume. Yes, I do. Very well then, you may proceed to give your formal testimony about what exactly happened in your cabin aboard the ship on the evening of the 31st of October. Of course, as a man of the law, I have no intention of obstructing justice. I had a guest waiting for me when I returned to my cabin after finishing my evening meal in the dining room. When I walked through the door, a mustachioed Englishman was there, foolishly waving a gun at me. I soon took care of him with a Nippon Seoi throw. Okay. Though, he couldn't wait to run away after that. I imagine his watch was broken when I threw him over my shoulder. It has nothing to do with his murder. The inspector was clearly killed having returned to Britain because his body was found in London. Ippon Seoi? A common jujutsu martial arts technique in my country. I was careful not to use too much force, but the man obviously landed too heavily for his watch to take. So, Ryunosuke naruhodo, I imagine you can see the flaw in your logic now, can't you? What? The fact that the pocket watch was broken in the witness's cabin in no way proves that the victim's murder took place there. Wasn't it inside the trunk that we found it, though? They don't say. I can't recall now. I have no doubt the inspector intended to kill me, but he didn't manage to pull the trigger. Yes, because he was merely the tactician, not the Reaper's hand of death. Well, the testimony appears to make perfect sense as far as I can tell. Let me express my deep gratitude for your understanding, my lord. But if this testimony holds, Judge Jigoku will be deemed to have had no involvement in the case. Well, counsel, I really see no reason for wasting precious court time here on a cross-examination. It's my right and I demand it. Sorry, my lord, the defense has a right to cross-examine, and I don't intend to squander that. You're an embarrassment to your countrymen, not knowing when you're beaten. In that case, proceed, Mr. Naruhodo. Okay. Okay, first let me have a look at everything he says. When I walked through the door, yeah, a mustachioed Englishman was there, foolishly waving a gun at me. It's probably not gonna be that. Yeah, the trunk doesn't tell us when the blood was, when the blood stained it, so I guess this doesn't tell us much. Nah, it wouldn't be something to do with the picture, right? I'm not feeling too warm right now. Hold on. We have beautiful weather outside. Not quite sure. Yeah, 23 degrees outside, but here in my room it's like barely 20 degrees at the moment because it's been cooler for the past few days. And now I don't feel so hot. The glass over the face really is badly cracked, look. But wait a minute. How would it have broken if it has the cover to protect it, though? The glass over the face really is badly cracked. Look, what a shame when the inspector clearly looked after it so carefully. I imagine Mr. Shumus could repair it, don't you? Yes, I should think so. He's very adept at things like this. A useful man to have around, in fact. But kindly remember that he's a great detective, Mr. Naruhodo, not an odd-job man. The inspector was clearly killed having returned to Britain because his body was found in London. Time to press everything again, I guess. Because the so-called guard posted at your cabin door had just let your killer pass, you mean? Apparently, Gregson told the crewman he was a police inspector, which was the truth, of course. He wouldn't have had his identification with him, though. He had his trench coat and mustache, not to mention the bag of chips. I imagine the crewman was convinced. But the man accompanying him would have had 2 swords slung around his waist. You mean me? Who else? Yes, that's true. You would have hoped the sight of a few swords might have set off alarm bells in the guard's head. The point is, I left the cabin before its occupant returned, and I immediately disembarked the ship. Certainly, all I can tell you is that only the inspector was waiting for me when I arrived back at my cabin. And you entered without any inkling of suspicion? That's right, none whatsoever. When I walked through the door, a mustachioed Englishman was there, foolishly waving a gun at me. Obviously, you're talking about Inspector Gregson. Yes, though at the time I didn't know the man's name, and there was no time for introductions. I value my life over manners. By which you mean that the inspector was there to assassinate you, I suppose. That was certainly the impression given by the gun pointing in my direction, but I've never seen the muzzle of a revolver shake about so much in all my life. Anyone would think the man had never shot somebody before. Believe it or not, most of us haven't. Anyway, there was no time to call for the help of the crewman at the door, so I dealt with the man myself. I soon took care of him with an Ippon-seoi throw, though he couldn't wait to run away after that. Even though the man had a gun, that was a very brave move, wasn't it? My Ippon-seoi is far faster than a bullet, I can assure you. But surely all that commotion caused the crewman to come in, didn't it? Yes, of course. He burst in immediately without knocking. The inspector hurled himself at the stocky fellow and just managed to slip past him to make his escape. The outstanding guard does it again. Luckily, there aren't many situations I can't get out of using a quick Ippon-seoi throw. I imagine his watch was broken when I threw him over my shoulder. It has nothing to do with his murder. The crown snapped off and the glass covering the face of the watch was cracked. Preferable to the man's head being pulled off or his spine cracking, wouldn't you say? Not that the man was spared for long. A bullet to the chest soon saw to that. But the point is, the broken pocket watch doesn't prove that a murder took place. Absolutely not. All the watch proves is the power of my jujutsu throw. Whatever you say, it doesn't quite ring true that no shot was fired in that cabin. Because there was an obvious bullet hole in the wall. Yeah, laugh all you want. What are you talking about? That's what the star of your lowbrow detective stories told you, is it? Well, I don't care for such fiction. Haven't you worked it out yet, you little stripling? No murder took place in my cabin. The inspector was clearly killed having returned to Britain because his body was found in London. But there's no evidence that proves the victim ever returned to London alive. Just take a moment to think that idea of yours through now, stripling. If the inspector was killed on the steamship in France, how on earth could he have got back to Britain? When people die, their bodies remain at that same spot. It's a devil of a thing. Well then, obviously the culprit must have moved the body. How exactly? Carrying a corpse off a ship in your arms would raise a few eyebrows at least, don't you think? In your trunk, I'd say. Well, yes, that's true, but all passenger luggage is inspected when it is unloaded from arriving vessels. All of it? I would like to think the border police would query the corpse of an English gentleman as hand luggage. If the murder had taken place aboard a ship, you would imagine the body would have been disposed of at sea. There would be no sense in risking being caught by attempting to transport the body back to Britain. That's killed that idea then. But perhaps not, Mr. Sato. We've heard that the first-class passengers were under constant scrutiny by the crewmen posted to guard them, which would mean that the culprit had no opportunity to dispose of the body in the sea. Yes, that's true, so transporting the body to Britain may have been the only viable alternative. Dear me, you really are new to this, aren't you? I thought I'd been perfectly clear, but it seems I'm going to have to explain it in words you can understand. I think I ought to alter my testimony with your consent, of course, my lord. Yeah, go on. State your amended testimony now. There's no possible way I could have transported the victim's corpse back to Britain. Your trunk? That's my idea. This one is a bit too small, though. Or do I have documents saying that he got his trunk through some other means? The trunk is visible in this picture, is that it? That could be it. There's no possible way you could have moved Inspector Gregson's body, you say? I would say the opposite is true. And what's that supposed to mean? Far from being impossible for you to do. The transporting of Inspector Gregson's body back to Britain is something only you could do. What are you talking about, Ryunosuke? As well as being a judge, Mr. Jigoku is also Japan's Minister of Foreign Affairs, so they wouldn't have searched his luggage, I think. Which means he's exempt from having his luggage searched when he enters the country. We learned that when we first met you upon your arrival in London. Ah, that was mentioned? I actually didn't remember that. Well, all those passport checks and luggage searches at the border took rather a lot of time. I must say I'm very envious of your ministerial status. You didn't have to go through any of that, did you? Ah, I knew you were jealous. I presume you recall this, Judge Jigoku. You had a big trunk. It's a photograph we took in the foyer of the hotel to mark the occasion. As the court will note, you have with you your large travel trunk. Large enough, in fact, to have a corpse inside. In fact, you were hiding inside of it yourself just the day before, so, it's certainly large enough. And you seem larger than Gregson, I would add. So, definitely. Mr. Naruhodo, surely you're not suggesting... I'm afraid I am, yes. 3 days ago, when we were chatting innocently with the new arrivals from Japan in the hotel, the body of Inspector Gregson was just meters away from us, inside Judge Jigoku's trunk. Order! Order! Order in the court! I'm skeptical, counsel, that a grown man's body could fit inside even the largest travel trunk. It could, because I happen to know that the witness himself, a man of considerable size, fits inside this trunk. And verifying that would be extremely simple, wouldn't it, Judge Jigoku? But inside this trunk, how horrifying! And after we'd spoken with you at the Great Waterloo Hotel, you had the opportunity to visit the apparent scene on Fresno Street. Taking your trunk with you in a cab to deposit the inspector's body. I don't have to listen to this nonsense. Dr. Gori, the coroner who examined the body, has confirmed the possibility. She's acknowledged there are signs that steps may have been taken to disguise the true time of death. The onset of the body's decomposition could have been delayed by storing it in a refrigerator. Counsel, as I remember explaining yesterday, refrigerators of the requisite size are few and far between. None on the ship it wasn't. Yes, I'm sure they are, but one place they're certainly found is on large ocean liners. Such ships are equipped with electrically refrigerated cold rooms to keep food fresh on their long sea voyages, and the SS Grouse is no exception. Professor Mikotoba told me about it only yesterday. Well, Judge Jigoku? However much you prolong this debate, you can't eliminate the truth. All the evidence points to you being the killer. Well, this is all very heartening. I can see that it was a wise move, letting Asogi and you embark on this study tour. What are you talking about now? Logical reasoning, of course. All court proceedings will be built on logical reasoning in the new century. Because they weren't before? That's actually very concerning. And I can see that you've both laid firm foundations for that already. Judge Jigoku, please stop diverting attention from the issue at hand. The defense has made an accusation against you. How do you respond? Respond? There's really no need for me to respond, is there? Why ever not? Because before you can even begin to answer the question of when the victim was killed, you must first establish one key fact. Where was the victim killed? It's quite logical. The actual scene of the crime. The prosecution's stance is unaltered. The killing took place on Fresno Street when the gunshot was heard. As the accused, Baruch Van Zieks shot the victim at point-blank range. Since no tangible evidence exists to disprove the prosecution's claim at this time, the defense's deductions amount to little more than an elaborate fairy tale. I'm afraid that's how the logical reasoning the British are known for really works, young stripling. The victim was shot in that little room on Fresno Street and died instantly. I'm afraid it's the prosecution's claim. That's the only fairy tale here. How can you say that? Quite simply, because that claim directly contradicts a certain piece of evidence in our possession. Very tantalizing, counsel. I think you had better explain yourself to the court, don't you? The prosecution claims that Inspector Gregson died instantly when he was shot at the scene on Fresno Street. But this evidence clearly contradicts that claim. Okay, hold on. Indeterminate. Evidence suggests measures may have been taken. What? This? What else? Is there a... The bullet was never found that killed him also. There's also that. No? Japanese really are a curious breed to prefer an argument with such conviction only to present such nonsensical evidence. Perhaps my Japanese friend's inexplicable thinking is why people talk of the mystique of the East. In case you hadn't noticed, I'm not the only Japanese around here. Do you even have a mirror? Okay, yeah, that's incorrect. It's not the autopsy report. I'm at a bit of a loss. Yeah, this is incorrect also. I'm not sure what he means by this evidence contradicts that claim. What, the plan? No, okay, this is incorrect also. The passport? No. The watch? No, this is incorrect. Can I present profiles, maybe? Because maybe I'm looking at pieces of evidence, but maybe it's a person I have to present, no? No, I can't. Okay, it has to be an item. The trunk I already tried. Is ID? No. Damn it. I hate having to try everything like that until I find the right one, but I am at a bit of a loss. It's probably nothing to do with that. That's also not that. The murder weapon? No, okay. No, having another look at it, I don't think that would change anything. So this is the type of revolver that's standard issue for members of the judiciary then. Yes, and when I asked about whether records are kept about who they're issued to, I was told that for the past 5 years they've been engraved with a unique serial number. Oh, but as far as I can tell, there's nothing like that on this gun. Which tells us that it must have been issued longer ago than that. Really? Is that important? Oh. Hey RNG, how's it going? How are you today? What have I been up to? Not much. Just spent the day outside yesterday having a barbecue. Other than that, well, I haven't been doing much. You just woke up? Telegram from Japan. I'm gonna have to try every piece of evidence, because logic isn't getting me anywhere. Well, at this rate, I may just as well look it up, because, okay. Well, it was the picture, apparently. Photograph of the victim in the very location you claim he wasn't killed? Yes, but the point is, the posture of the body itself. Oh, really? If Inspector Gregson had been shot there in that room, it's out of the question that his body would have been curled up in a ball like that. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but your logic is flawed. He could easily have adopted that fetal position due to the pain of the shot, which subsequently proved fatal. He died on the spot, no? Isn't that what the autopsy says? Instant death, yeah. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Judge Jigoku, but it's your logic that is flawed. What? According to this autopsy report, the victim died instantly. He would have felt no pain, much less have been able to draw himself into that position. Which begs the question of why the victim's body is curled up in that way. Though the answer should be abundantly clear by now, you're suggesting it's the position he was in when he was put in the trunk. The inspector's body took on that posture ahead of its arrival on Fresno Street, before it was coldly turned out on the floor. From the inside of a large travel trunk. No! You're quite right! The shape of the body looks exactly as if it had been kept in a confined space. Judge Jigoku, present your trunk for examination. I believe it's very possible that it will contain traces of the victim's blood. Arrgh! Present my trunk? I refuse. What? On what grounds? I'm the Minister of Foreign Affairs from the Empire of Japan. I shouldn't have to put up with this treatment just because of some stripling's baseless accusations. In other words, Judge Jigoku, there is blood in your trunk. I decline to answer that. As the Minister of Foreign Affairs, I have privileges that allow me to... At this moment, you're not a government minister. You are a witness in a trial in Britain's highest court. I don't care who you are or what your status outside this courtroom might be. You will not withhold information. Present your trunk. Are you an elephant, sir? Hi, Tinkenbell. How's it going? Nothing is more important than the truth. Order! Order in court! Well, Mr. Jigoku, what's it to be? You can't be serious. You did it? Have you no shame at all, Kazuma Asogi? I just woke up half an hour ago. You're late to rise? I woke up at 11 AM myself. I mean, I'm also not a morning person, so there's not much I can say. Very well, I admit it. I did bring the inspector's body into the country. Inside my trunk, exactly as postulated by the defense. Oh, you... Dear God, outrageous. So it was you. You admit to Inspector Gregson's murder. Or something. Yeah. I've been playing video games till 3 AM yesterday, but otherwise doing good. How about you? Heard you had a yummy barbecue? Yeah, for lunch yesterday, yeah, and then spent the afternoon outside in the sun. We're having lovely weather these days also, so it was good. There hasn't really been much opportunity to have barbecues outside this summer. It's been raining most of the time, so... And not being very warm outside either. No, I admit to nothing more than what I've said. Of killing the man, I certainly have no recollection. What on earth is that cryptic statement supposed to mean? I merely disposed of the inspector's body which was left in my cabin, in order to avoid unwanted attention. As the judicial assistant over there pointed out, I had no chance to throw it into the ocean. So, I decided my only option was to bring it into Britain with me and dispose of it somewhere else. You can't still deny it. If you didn't do it, then who on earth did kill the man? As you know, there was one other person in my cabin that night. He had the opportunity. And moreover, he'd already accepted a mission to take the inspector's life. He's shifting the blame to the prosecutor in the case this time. This case is... It's quite something. I mean, the one in the witness stand is a judge, and he's a crook. The prosecutor had the mission to assassinate someone. And I strongly think that the judge, Lord Strongheart, is also implicated somehow. Like, the defense attorney is the only one who is innocent in the room or something. This is quite something. That's right, who else could it have been? It was you, Kazuma Asogi. You. I never thought you'd stoop to this, Seiichiro Jigoku. You've taken the words straight out of my mouth. Prosecutor Kazuma Asogi. You thought by leaving the body in my cabin you could pin the crime on me, did you? Everyone is the murderer except me, yeah. Basically. Well, the prosecution counsel has already admitted to visiting the witness's cabin on the night in question. Yes, on an assassination mission, no less. You wouldn't. So, what do you make of that, young stripling? You've heard my testimony now, and that's all I have to say on the matter. I'll admit to nothing more. I don't believe this. Counsel for the defense, what is your position now? The court awaits your response to the witness's assertion. The assertion that on the night in question, the victim's assailant was in fact Mr. Kazuma Asogi. This isn't the dead end it seems to be. The answer is right in front of me. It comes down to Jigoku, or Kazuma. Both of them had the opportunity to kill Gregson, but only one of them did it. Well, at least, for the time being, my client is in the clear, since it couldn't have been him. I'm just a step away from proving who. Very well, the defense is ready to respond to the assertion put forward by Judge Jigoku. The idea that the victim's murder could have been committed by Prosecutor Asogi is... I suppose I'm supposed to say impossible. I just don't know why it's impossible yet. I don't know where the game is steering me at the moment. Judge Jigoku, let me remind you of something you said only a few minutes ago. You claimed that logical reasoning is the future of the judicial process. It is, no question. Well, logical reasoning can prove something here. Namely, that it would have been impossible for Prosecutor Asogi to commit the crime. What? court will only accept an argument that is supported by compelling evidence, so present what you have, counsel. What proof is there that allegedly demonstrate the impossibility of Prosecutor Asogi's involvement? Not that. That's more incriminating than anything else, this one. What, because he has a sword and not a gun? Or because he doesn't own a revolver? Maybe that's it? No, I have no idea. You're making the evidence weep here, Sorry, every piece of evidence has a role to play in arriving at the truth. They are not playthings you can toss around the courtroom for entertainment. Never mind the evidence, you're about to make me weep, Mr. Naruto. Alright. Sorry. I don't know. How can I prove that it wasn't him? The trunk? No, okay, that's not it. Oh man, Leonosuke pulls out a gun in court. Kazuma, bruh. This gun. Stop waving it around, man. The sword? No. Katana, I should say, probably. I really don't know. Okay, this itinerary for crew members of the SS Growls, my lord. This is conclusive proof. An itinerary? How does that prove anything? Judge Jigoku, the moment you acknowledge that you found the victim's body in your cabin, this itinerary suddenly became much more significant. What? Why? On the night in question, as always, a crewman sentry was on guard outside your cabin door. As long as he was there, nobody could have fired a shot inside the cabin. Ah, yeah. That's true. Absolutely, because it's inconceivable that the guard wouldn't have heard it and come to investigate. So that tells us that the crime must have taken place when the guard was elsewhere. And that narrows it down to the 20 minutes just after 10 o'clock, as indicated on the itinerary. Yes, I see no flaw in your reasoning so far. But the crucial point is this: when the evacuation drill took place, the steamship had already put to sea from the port of Dunkirk. Now, clearly the murder could only have been committed by somebody who was aboard the vessel at the time. But Prosecutor Asogi stated in yesterday's proceedings, I didn't come to Great Britain to take anyone's life, so I left Gregson and disembarked the ship. I spent that night at the boarding house in the town and returned to England the following morning. Yeah, but I had no evidence that proved that he said that, or that what he said was true, though. So I thought of it, but I didn't know how to show it. Which I'm sure the court will agree is conclusive proof. That Kazuma Asogi couldn't possibly have carried out the killing. Yarr! No, absolutely not. I don't accept that at all. What do you mean? The boy is just saying that to exonerate himself. We can't trust that he really disembarked the vessel. Obviously, after he left my cabin, he hid himself somewhere nearby on the ship. Just waiting for his chance to come back and finish the... No, that's out of the question. Isn't it, Kazuma? As the defense rightly recalls, I disembarked the vessel and spent the night in a boarding house in Dunkirk. And as I said yesterday, I signed my name in the accommodations register book. All extremely easy to verify, and undeniable proof. No, There's no escape this time. You can forget that you're a judge or a government minister. It's time you give the court an honest answer, as a common man. Grrr. You killed Inspector Tobias Gregson and transported his corpse back to Britain. Then you dumped the body in the room on Fresno Street and made it look as if the murder had happened there. That's what really happened, isn't it? Seiichiro Jigoku. It was that damned trial 10 years ago. That's when all this began. Oh boy. Oh boy. Looking back now, my fate was decided that day. I was doomed already. Uh-oh. Ah! Oh. He broke it again. The pieces just fly away. It's over. My life is over. I like it when they break. Their breakdown, I mean. A British assassin to eliminate a professor in Japan. A Japanese assassin to eliminate a detective in Britain. Both assassins will use diplomatic immunity to evade conviction and return safely to their homelands. Imagine hating someone so much like this guy, yeah. Such rage. The assassin exchange request arrived from Britain about 1 year ago. Though it was hardly a request, it was a demand. And for that, you decided to recruit Mr. Asogi. But things didn't go according to plan. Your chosen assassin never made it to Britain, and you found yourself unable to dispatch a replacement. Because I was already on my way to Britain at that time, in Kazuma's place. And that left me with only one option for carrying out my obligation. To eliminate the mark myself. Personally, yeah. Of course, there was but a single opportunity for me to do that. The International Forensic Science Symposium, I presume. That's right. I decided it would be safest to carry out the plan before my arrival in Britain, so I enlisted the help of my British counterpart. And made arrangements for a pretext that would take the inspector to Dunkirk. To lure the man in, he was given a sham mission by the Reaper. What? The Reaper? But there's only one person who could have done that. The mastermind of the entire operation. The Reaper himself. I was gonna suggest that my client masterminded the whole thing. He's not the Reaper. So that means that the assassin exchange was... It was all planned by the Reaper? I'm not at liberty to say anything about my British counterpart. Anyway, the inspector accepted the Reaper's mission and dutifully infiltrated my cabin on the steamship. But it was all a trap designed to lead him to France and his own death. Oh, how awful. It was past 9 o'clock when I returned to my cabin from the dining hall that evening. I didn't give him time to attack me. I choked him until he lost consciousness. But there was a guard just outside the door. So I left it at that for the time being. Even the slightest noise might have aroused suspicion. So I bided my time, waiting. For the 20 minutes after 10 o'clock. I had intended to finish him by strangulation, but moments before I had the chance, he suddenly came round and went for me in a reckless move. I'd received the British issue gun 16 years earlier, being a member of the judiciary as a visiting student. Hence why it doesn't have a serial number on it. Because it's an old one. I never imagined I'd have to use it for something like that. So the revolver belongs to you, does it? Then the victim was killed inside your cabin on the SS Grouse, which begs the question of why you arranged for his body to be discovered in the room on Fresno Street. They just hand out guns? Wow, I guess in those days, yeah, they did. The young judicial assistant over there has already answered that question. There was no way I could take the body up on deck and to throw it over the side. That's precisely where all the crewmen were gathered for the evacuation drill. Yeah. So before the first-class cabin sentries returned, I took the corpse to the refrigeration room. And then on arriving in Dover, you concealed the body in your trunk in order to smuggle it past the border police. I knew I needed to take steps if the police were to be convinced when the body was found in London. In that case, you must have known. You must have had intimate details of Inspector Gregson's intended schedule. Yes, my British counterpart sent me everything I needed to know. The inspector was due at Fresno Street at 5 o'clock that afternoon, in order to meet a man by the name of Hugh Boone, from whom he would take back his police identification. I decided that man would be the perfect person to set up as a culprit, so I took a hackney carriage over there with the body still in my trunk. That must have been just after we took this photograph with you at the hotel then. Yes, I wasn't expecting a welcoming committee. I was more than a little nervous. On Fresno Street, I spotted a young girl selling little firecrackers. Miss Venus, of course. I conceived of the candle trick there and then. So I donned the simple disguise and approached the girl to buy enough firecrackers to replicate a gunshot. I wonder what he was disguised as. What sort of disguise? For some reason, the inspector had a bright red earpiece in his own traveling case. You with a red hairpiece? That must be quite the sight. So I put that on, although I suspect I drew more attention to myself in that than I would have otherwise. The earpiece we found at the scene. The inspector had it ready for the Red-Headed League investigation. Yeah. I only arrived at the room at around 4:45. So I quickly placed the body on the floor, moved the notice board, and set up my little candle trick. I'd like to imagine he puts on those glasses with the mustache despite already having a mustache. Yeah. And the big fake nose. I arranged it so the firecrackers would go off with a bang around 15 minutes later, so that Mr. Boone, who was due to arrive at 5, would walk straight into a trap. Except at the last moment, I made a careless blunder. What was that? I imagine it was the bag of fish and chips. I did notice that it had fallen out of his overcoat pocket when I moved the body to the refrigeration room. I put it back into his pocket the following morning, but... well, it seems the warmth of the heated cabin had accelerated the decay of the fish. Anyway, that's how it happened. That's everything. All the sordid details of what I did. Okay. I've heard enough. We've arrived at the truth about the murder of one of the country's most capable and respected police inspectors. The witness will be tried in the coming days. For a crime of such a vile nature, you can expect the most severe penalty. The gallows. He's going to the gallows. An exchange of assassins. What a foolhardy idea. Mr. Jigoku, one last detail. Who was your counterpart in Britain? Who was the mastermind behind the assassin exchange? He's not gonna say. Nothing you say now can make matters any worse for you. Just tell us. Enough! I've already told you that I cannot say. Even though as things stand, you may very well never set foot in your homeland again. What are you waiting for? Can't we get this over with now? It's finished. All of it. I'm finished. Yada de chatta. Then, in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I now pronounce the findings of this court. This man before us has admitted to the willful murder of Tobias Gregson. Why is it guilty? I mean, it's not him that's being judged, it's my client. Seiichiro Jigoku, it is the opinion of this court that you should be found. It's not him that was being judged. What about my client? Is he gonna commit seppuku or what? Why would he be finished? The death penalty, because the penalty for murder in those days in Great Britain was death. There's no life imprisonment or anything. We know that because it was shown in all the previous cases in both games. Moments ago, Mr. Jigoku signed a written confession, admitting to the murder of Inspector Gregson and the subsequent conveyance of the body. In short, the defendant's innocence has therefore been established beyond doubt. Oh, wonderful! Well done, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, thank you. Is something wrong? I'm just a little troubled by his silence. The true identity of the Reaper of the Bailey and this extraordinary assassin exchange. We do remain in the dark about these mysteries. However, insofar as the indictment brought against the defendant in this trial, we have reached a conclusion. I have every intention of pursuing both mysteries. As a prosecutor, as you wish, now for the formal adjudication. I hereby declare the defendant, Baruch Van Zieks, Yeti. The prosecution calls for adjudication to be deferred. Counsel? He's gonna accuse him of being the mastermind in Britain now, so that he can still send him to prison, saying, well, he may not have perpetrated the murder by himself, but he certainly was the mastermind behind it all, so yeah, the accused's innocence hasn't been fully established at all, and therefore it would be wrong to deliver a verdict at this time. This is the prosecution's unwavering position. What? But Judge Jigoku has already confessed. Nevertheless, Baruch Van Zieks has committed crimes for which he must be punished. What it would appear you have information that the court needs to hear, Prosecutor Asogi. Certainly the murder of Inspector Gregson was actually carried out by Seiichiro Jigoku. But it's clear from the witness's testimony that he was coerced into complying with the plot, into this sick, merciless assassin exchange. That may be true, but... So what I want to know is who coerced Jigoku? Who was pulling the strings? The victim went to France having been ordered on a mission for the Reaper, only to be murdered. In other words, the mastermind behind the assassin exchange is someone in a position to give such an order. As we've already established, the Reaper himself. Well, certainly that would appear to follow. The prosecution hereby formally accuses the man in the dock, Baruch Van Zieks. I knew it. He wants revenge for his dad. Yeah, of being the Reaper of the Bailey, and furthermore, I'm going to prove his guilt beyond all reasonable doubt. What? It's him, I bet, the Reaper. I bet it's him. From the start, I thought he had the face of a villain. A villain well disguised, perhaps, but I'm pretty sure he is the villain. The Reaper of the Bailey is a long-standing mystery, Counsel. Are you suggesting you have some new information with which to build a case? Scotland Yard has already investigated Lord Van Zieks very thoroughly in that regard, and they found no evidence whatsoever to substantiate the claim that he is the Reaper. Perhaps, but circumstances have now changed. What do you mean? They all look like villains. It's already been established that the assassin exchange was negotiated with Jigoku by the Reaper himself, which means we now have a new line of questioning by which to identify definitively the man's identity. That is the prosecution's intention here. I must say I'm surprised by quite how tenaciously you appear to want to besmirch my name. You are guilty of an unforgivable crime, Lord Van Zieks. And I will bring you to justice for it, whatever it takes. That explains Kazuma's silence before. He'll stop at nothing to finish what Lord Van Zieks unwittingly started 10 years ago. Very well. Whilst it's extremely irregular, I will on this occasion grant the prosecution further opportunity for witness testimony. The defendant will disclose any and all involvement he has had with the Reaper and the Assassin Exchange. I thank you, my lord, for guiding the court so wisely. I hereby declare this court to be in session for a supplementary hearing. Pray turn a blind eye to the discourtesy as I verify that this vile and unremitting accusation hasn't soured the contents of my hallowed chalice. Lord Van Zieks! I first had to suffer the pseudonym of the Reaper 10 years ago now, and ever since that time, I've endured the weight of implied guilt that's gone with it. So I welcome the chance to testify now, and crush those allegations once and for all. Good. Then let justice decide, Lord Van Zieks. The prosecution seeks to begin building its case by calling the accused to the stand as the primary witness, in order that he may answer the accusation brought by the prosecution that he is the Reaper of the Bailey. And what says the defense? Putting the defendant in the witness stand can be extremely dangerous, and Kazuma-sama is so emotional at the moment he's not thinking logically. You're right that he is not himself, but I knew it would be like this, and I came here today determined to face him through whatever might arise. As a lawyer and as his friend. Then that's what we must do. The defense has no objection, my lord. Very well, defendant, you will take the witness stand and give formal testimony on the subject of your involvement with the Reaper and the Assassin Exchange. As you wish, my lord. The Reaper and the Assassin Exchange. I've never taken the life of another, nor have I instructed another to kill. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and I was aware of Gregson's involvement. That's the reason why I went to Fresno Street that day, and how I came to discover the body. The point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. Clearly, therefore, there is no reason to suspect me of being behind the Assassin Exchange. So you deny all accusations by the prosecution, both that you are the Reaper of the Bailey and that you masterminded the Assassin Exchange? I acknowledge that the public at large believe me to be the Reaper. However, that's a fallacy, which I alone am in a position to forswear. Naturally, the prosecution believes the testimony just given by the accused to be untrue. Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Yes. Let me ask you, why are you here? What really brings you to this courtroom? The pursuit of the truth. Yeah, a desire to uncover the truth. Yeah, right. Even if the truth proves your client to be guilty. From all my experiences in this courtroom, I've come to realize something. The truth can't be hidden. Sooner or later, it will come out. So it's always my intention to work with my client in pursuit of the truth. I want you to remember what you just said. Enough dilatory chatter. Counsel for the defense, proceed to cross-examine the witness. Ah, yes, my lord. I know exactly what you're thinking, Kazuma. I know you're just waiting to point it out. The contradiction you're convinced lies somewhere within this man's testimony. Pardon me. So you're not what the general public referred to as the infamous Reaper of the Bailey? Exactly. Don't imagine for a moment that the court will be satisfied with a one-word answer on this. I realize that. If you're intending to comment on every sentence, this could take a while, Kazuma. Didn't you find it disturbing, though, that one-by-one defendants who'd been acquitted after urine sexual prosecution were killed? Let me answer that question by posing another. If one-by-one defendants who'd been acquitted after your successful defense were killed, would you find that disturbing? Disturbing? I couldn't possibly say how that would make me feel with a one-word answer like that. Exactly. Well, that told me. But even though I'm not the Reaper, that doesn't mean I ignored all the hearsay. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and I was aware of Gregson's involvement. How? You say for years? How long exactly? And how did you know? Since the very first time the Reaper's influence was felt in this courtroom. 10 years ago now. And your investigations led you somehow to Inspector Gregson, you're saying? I didn't want to believe it. He was a personal acquaintance. We'd worked on cases together in the past. A friend, even. It felt like a betrayal, but I demanded permission to search his office at the yard without his knowledge. Which is when you found the secret notebook, is it? It's when I first learned of the location he'd noted only as grouse and the appointment at 5 PM on the 31st, though I didn't know the significance of those details at the time. So now we're at the nub of the matter. As it turns out, the significance for me personally was very unfortunate. But why did you go to that specific location? I thought that if it was the Reaper's headquarters, then by turning up there at 5 o'clock I would catch whoever was involved red-handed. Sadly, all that was awaiting me was the Inspector's corpse. Yes, even though it wasn't designed for you, you walked straight into the trap set by Jigoku. Exactly. Jigoku had intended to implicate Hugh Boone, but unhappily for me, I arrived at the scene first. Ha! A ridiculously careless blunder. Moved on to just throwing insults around, I see then, Kazuma. Think what you will, it doesn't change the truth. The point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. Hold on. About that. Yeah, Dr. Wilson? Yeah, indeed. Because I have this photograph with him and Gregson, but unless... Hold on. The autopsy report of Clint Van Zieks, maybe? John Wilson, Gregson, and Clint Van Zieks? I saved, right? I think I have. Yeah, I had. Yeah, that's the common thread. What is this? An autopsy report? Wait, this is 10 years old. From the autopsy of Lord Clint Van Zieks. What? My brother's autopsy report? I'm pleased to see the defense doesn't intend to run from the undeniable truth. Yeah, even if it's not good for my clients, I want to know the truth. Order in court. What reason do you have for presenting a 10-year-old autopsy report here, Consul? This, the autopsy report of the professor's final victim, is an indelible link between Inspector Gregson, Dr. Wilson, and the defendant. Not that accursed name again, the professor. I've personally researched all of the court's records relating to that case. I know that at the time autopsy was considered sacrilege to the victims' souls. And for a member of the aristocracy like Lord Clint Van Zieks, it was unthinkable. But someone implored the powers that be to allow the autopsy to go ahead. Inspector Gregson. He declared that he was certain he would obtain conclusive proof from the procedure. And it was Dr. Wilson who conducted the autopsy. His signature is clearly visible on the document. As promised by Gregson, the autopsy did indeed produce evidence. Evidence that conclusively proved Genshin Asogi was guilty of the murders. In my brother's dying moments, he mustered all his remaining strength to leave that vital clue behind. Indeed, that was the key to indicting the professor for his crimes and the conclusive evidence that convicted him. It enabled Lord Van Zieks here to avenge his brother's senseless death, with a marvelous victory in court. A marvelous victory, was it? I wonder if that's really true. What? Could the same be said if it turned out that the key piece of evidence in question was in fact fabricated? If the inspector, the coroner, and the prosecutor all colluded together to cast an innocent Japanese man as a masked murderer and send him to his death? That's outrageous. And now, 10 years later, for some reason the secret has been threatened and needs protecting. Which is why the inspector and the coroner had to be silenced, isn't it? By someone in power in Japan and in Britain, using the two killers recruited for the assassin exchange. It wasn't Lord Van Zieks' fault, though. Order! Order at once! 10 years ago, my father was convicted in this very courtroom as a mass murderer to be sentenced to death. But it was all a sham, and I swore to myself that I'd prove it. Which is why I had to come to Britain. Whatever the cost. Yeah, but we already knew that. We had that figured out already. You'll have to forgive me if I feel compelled to toast this vengeful Nipponese's tenacity of purpose here. However, he who fails to quash his emotions in the courtroom has failed as a lawyer. Come on, Kazuma, you know this won't wash. You're claiming your father was misrepresented in a trial that took place a whole decade ago? You must see that without evidence, that's nothing more than a wild accusation. As it happens, I have evidence. What? As the court has heard, I crossed the channel to France with Gregson on the 31st. I went with him on the pretext of being the assassin recruited to kill Seiichiro Jigoku, but my true intentions were to make the inspector tell me the truth. What truth? The truth about the evidence, and he acknowledged what I had already deduced. There's a closely guarded secret about what went on in that autopsy 10 years ago. What? A secret? I know nothing of any secret. While we waited for my supposed mark in Jigoku's cabin, I drew my clan's illustrious sword Karuma before the inspector's eyes. He very quickly understood what my true motive was. Right, I see. You're that Asogi's young lad, are you? And what, you're gonna cut me down with that thing, is that it? That will very much depend on the answers you give to my questions. I want to know what really happened 10 years ago. The truth, that's all. Before we get into it, let me make one thing clear. I still believe your father was the professor, there's no doubt in my mind. But unfortunately back then, we didn't have the evidence we needed to make the crime stick. So you admit it then? The evidence used in my father's trial was fabricated? Wait. Wait, there's something wrong with my capture here, no? There's no sound. It's frozen. No? My capture is frozen. Hold on a minute. Yeah. It's a good thing I looked at my laptop because I was reading and I didn't notice that something was wrong there. That's a problem. I don't know, I'm gonna try unplugging it. Yeah, no device. But OBS doesn't always do a very good job of booting it back up unless I close OBS and open it up again. So, bummer. Yeah, it's gonna remain stuck on one moment, please, for a while. Okay, hold on then. I'm gonna delete it and add it back in. Yeah, no, it's still gonna say one moment, please. No. If it refuses to load it in OBS, try opening the camera app. Yeah, but no, because it's gonna have too much of an overhead on my poor laptop that's old. I'm gonna have to close OBS and start it up again. I'll be back in a few seconds. It's alright. Just bear with me. I'll boot the stream back up immediately.